Hey there, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the mind. I'm hoping this video will be a little shorter than some of the other ones. So we're going to look at a certain aspect of sort of the way that thoughts get processed in our brains, and then the way we respond, and how we can use that for our growth. And so let's see if we can make this a little shorter than the other videos. All right, you ready? Let's do it. So today I want to talk about the mind and how we're processing information. And this is coming from a little bit of my experience and listening to various people speak on the topic. But I, of course, with everything else, I try and see how to use these things for growth. So I'm going to share with you the way that, first of all, what it is, and then how it can be used, like by other people, and how you can use it to empower yourself instead of it being just a process that's happening. So let's get into this. Now, when we talk about the mind, we're talking about fundamentally one narrow little aspect. The mind is an incredibly complex thing, and I am no neuroscientist, I am no expert, so we're just going to talk about one little part which I found useful, and that is this. Someone explained it to me, and I've been trying to find the original source and I just couldn't. So if you know where this comes from, by all means, post in the comments. But here's the gist of it. Let's say you perceive something. So that's the first of 4 stages. So that's cognition, or you are experiencing something. Someone said something, someone did something happened. All right? That just happened in front of you. You heard, you smelled, whatever, something happened. Now, the second part is recognition or recognition. So that is essentially matching patterns to your memories. So something happened. Now that triggered a memory that you have of something similar. Okay, now there's a link made. The third step is sort of an emotional response. So that is to say that you saw something, you remembered, and then that memory triggered an emotion. And then the fourth is a reaction or a response. What do you do about it? Now, the important thing to know about this is that the first 3 steps happen like that. They're just instant. It's a part of your mind that just happens in a split second. The minute you see something, all 3 of those steps happen. The fourth step can either be conscious or unconscious, but it is you. It is your choice. That's the part that you actually can have control over. So that's the key part that I want you to know about. But each step along the way, we can do something about it. So let's look at it. Let's take an example. Suppose you see a dog. I'm going to use a dog because when I was in India, I found that very few people actually had pets. They didn't have like a dog as a pet. It's not nearly as common as in, say, the US. So a lot of people actually had a fear of dogs because the dogs were typically all stray animals and they were just like running around doing their own thing, and it's a little unruly. So if you were like that, if you for any reason have a fear of a dog or unexperienced with it, maybe you can relate to this example. So you see a dog. All right, that's step 1, cognition. You see the dog. Step 2, it triggers a memory. Suppose you had a bad experience with a dog in the past. So the dog comes. Now that memory comes. Oh, that's a dog. That's what that is. And the third step, the emotional response. I had a bad experience with the dog. Okay, now my heart's beating a little faster. Adrenaline's pumping a little bit because what if it bites me? What if I get hurt? What if something happens? I don't know about that. Right? All that happens just in that moment when you see the dog, right? Now, fourth step, what do you want to do about it, right? So if you are purely reactionary in this, if you are compulsive about it, you are just responding. Maybe you want to run away, maybe you scream, maybe you want to hide or tell someone to deal with the dog. Deal with that, take care of it, right? Because you immediately, in that particular instance, there's a million ways you could respond. I'm not saying everyone would respond this way, but this is just an example, right? So suppose that happens. Now, how do you deal with this situation? That's the part where you have control. That's where you're reacting. Okay, so clear, right? It's not that complicated. It's quite obvious if you just think about it. You probably already understood this to some degree. We're just articulating it. So that is something which someone explained to me and articulated. Now, how to use it for, well, first of all, what can happen? Two things. One, because you can be unconscious or conscious about it. Remember, if you saw the earlier video on how to live consciously, I was kind of explaining how if you are unconscious about things, not only will things just happen accidentally, you won't be in control nearly as much of yourself or your life, but also people can use situations to manipulate you. So this happens where, suppose, for example, you're the type who watches things on YouTube or watches the news, something like this, right? You're reading the paper, whatever. Something like that happens. A lot of times an article or a video or a news broadcast will use headlines which are triggering, which try and excite fear or anger in you, outrage, because that's a stronger response. And that makes sense. Evolutionarily, if you think about it, like, suppose we're way, way back, thousands and thousands of years, knowing that, okay, if I go over there, there is a tiger and it might eat me is a very important thing to remember. Remembering that over here are some sweet berries, which taste really nice, is nice, but remembering that the tiger is over there is very important, right? So that's the priority level in your mind. So when fear comes, you remember it, you respond strongly because you're afraid, and it's danger, right? So people will use this natural thing. You are triggering emotional responses that are negative or fearful or anger-inducing, and this will get people to react strongly. So this is a way people can manipulate you. And people who are manipulative are very aware of this. They know how to push your buttons and trigger emotional responses to you. So if you are unconscious, you can be manipulated. But more than that, like, that is definitely something which, for me, is a motivating factor, because I don't like being manipulated, and I don't think you do either. But more than that, I like being the one who decides how I am. I like being the one who takes the time to figure out how I want to respond to a situation or a person or whatever, and respond in the way that I want to, in the way that's best for myself and for the people around me, because that makes my life more enjoyable, more pleasant, and it makes the lives of the people around me more pleasant, because I can choose to respond in a way that is best for everybody, especially the people that I care about, right? So if you care about someone, for example, if you have a child, you would want to respond in the way that's best for them, for their well-being, for your family, for your friends, for your neighborhood, for your country, for the planet. So that is why. Now, what can we do about this? So let's go back to the dog example. Suppose there's a dog and you had this negative experience, and now you've got this fear thing going on. Okay, that experience passed. So now you have time to reflect. Okay, the dog came, I was afraid, and I responded this way. Ask yourself, is this the way that I want to respond? Is this how I would choose if it was purely my choice? It is, actually, but now that we're asking the question, this is my choice. Is this how I want to consciously choose to respond to the dog? Well, in my case, I might have thought, oh, well, I've heard dogs are supposed to be full of love and give you a lot of, these wonderful feelings. A lot of people really, really absolutely adore their dogs. And I guess, at least online, puppies are kind of cute, right? So why don't I try and experience some of this loving dog kind of relationship and see what it's all about? So how can you do something about that? There's a few things. One is to understand that right now, if the only memories you have are unpleasant ones of a dog, or memories of being afraid of the dog, then that's the most likely thing that's going to happen the next time you see a dog. You'll be afraid, right? Because that's the only thing your brain has to work off. So if you think of your brain as a bucket and the only thing in there is fearful memories, let's try and put some pleasant memories inside the bucket. How can you do that? Well, there's a lot of ways. One, do you know any friends or family or anybody who has a dog? And one that's like well behaved, maybe a little older, pleasant, or a puppy, something like that. Just ask them, hey, I want to get over this fear of dogs. You have a dog. Can you help me have a positive experience with this dog? Right? And you could also go to like an animal shelter or talk to a therapist or like all kinds of different people who would have some insights on how to get over fears. I'm certainly not an expert in that. I only know the methods that I use that work for me. So this is how I would approach it. Just like, okay, what is the safest environment which I could create for myself to generate positive memories so that the next time I see a dog just out and about, I have that experience to pull off of instead of the afraid one. So that's step one. Step two, or I don't know if they're like sequential, but these are different steps you could take, is just simply sit. Never mind the dog being physically there, but how do I want to respond to the dog? And like, maybe it's not a dog, it could be anything, but how do you want to respond? That's really important. If you decide this, then all the other things will kind of get fixed, whether it's going to a shelter or seeing somebody, like whatever. You'll figure out what's going to work for you based on your situation, because I don't know where you are. I don't know what your life is like, but I do know that dogs are pretty much everywhere, and you could probably find some way to give yourself a positive experience of that. So the next thing is not just with what kind of memories do you need to trigger, but specifically the emotion, because the emotional response, if you can shift it from a place of fear to something else, something more at ease, then it's more likely that you won't have such a strong response that you are like as likely to be reactive. Because we don't want to be reactive, we want to be consciously choosing. And the more afraid you are, the more likely you are to be compulsive and reactive. So keep in mind some of these things and just ask yourself these kind of questions. Go down this road and decide for yourself how you want to be. And in case you're thinking, well, I don't know about that. I don't know if I'm ready to face my fears. There's one analogy I'll share with you before we wrap this up, which is something I thought was really cool. It is a story of buffalo or bison rather, bison and cows. There's a place in Colorado which is rather unique in that there are both bison around that area of the country, as well as cattle or cows. And the interesting thing is that in that place, you've got all the Rocky Mountains, and then it just goes into flatlands. Like basically the plates come like this, they're flat as possible. There's tumbleweeds everywhere, and then poof, the mountains come up. So the cattle are there and the bison are there on the flatlands just next to the mountains. A storm can come over the mountains, as it typically would from west to east, and then the animals, being the way they are, will sense the storm, see the storm. Okay, the storm is coming. They know it's coming, and they're going through the same process you are, right? Like the storm is coming, they have a memory of the storm, they have an emotional response, and they respond. They react in some way. The interesting thing is this. The cattle typically run away from the storm, and the bison tend to run into the storm. So when the cattle run away from the storm, suppose this is the storm, and here are the cattle. They're running away from the storm, but eventually the storm will catch them, and they'll be in it longer because they're getting tangled up in fences or whatever. They're just running away out of fear, and they're actually in the storm longer. Whereas the bison choose to run into the storm, and they get wet first, but then they pass through to the other side. This is such an interesting observation that I don't even remember who made this. I really need to keep track of these things better. Again, if you've heard this story before, let me know where you heard it from, because I just can't, I haven't been able to recall. Anyway, the point is, if you respond the way of the bison, you're facing your fear head on, and you're deciding consciously that, yes, I might get wet quicker than if I run away, but I'll make it through the other side faster. I'll be in the storm less amount of time. Whereas if you go to the cattle, you might get all tangled up in all these things trying to get away from the storm, still be in the storm, and have to deal with it longer because you're not facing it. And this is not just true with something as simple as a storm, but also just with all kinds of situations in your life. You will find that the more directly you face the things which you're afraid of, the things which are danger, and address them consciously, the less of a problem they will be, and the more you will live your life the way you want to. I have found this to be true for myself, and I think if you ask yourself these kind of questions and take this simple understanding of this little thought process that occurs every time we, perceive anything, you can use it to make your life however you want to be. You can use it to empower yourself, and it doesn't have to be a big, overwhelming, daunting task. You can start super simple with little things, little steps that you can take. Start with things which are, meaningful but easy to accomplish. You just haven't been, right? And then work your way up and make this your way. The way that you choose to be is to understand that this is how your mind works, and to face whatever it is that you need to face in your life. If you make this your way, you'll be on the path to becoming, more conscious and dealing with the fact that you're burping while trying to make a video. What to do. But seriously, this really helps me a lot because I'm constantly able to observe that this is the way that things are happening for me, and be honest with myself about it. Be honest with myself about, hey, Heath, you're afraid of this. Let's deal with it. Let's face it somehow. Let's ask for help from somebody, or do whatever I need to do to deal with this situation, so that at least, even if I'm still afraid, I know how I want to respond, and I'm actively taking steps to try and make this a conscious thing. That has been just a treasured step that I take, and that I learned just from observing someone else explain this sort of concept and think about it. So I hope it helps you like it's helped me. And that's it for today. So if you like this content, if you think it's helpful, please like and subscribe, all the things. And most importantly, I hope you make use of this, because it's just been invaluable for me. So please tell me what you think, or if you have other thoughts on this, or other aspects that you think about in the thought process, and how you make use of that for your growth. I would love to hear that too. So you have a wonderful day, and make tomorrow the day that you want it to be. And you can use this to help you. So have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.